Yes, I'm saying that next week, my understanding is that another committee should be meeting on the Wednesday. We rotate. I'm saying to members that all things being equal, we won't meet, but the official notification will go out before the end of this week for members. Also, I think that the Parliament, we're meeting on the 5th, but it may well be that we're meeting to prorogue, which would mean that we may not have a meeting that Wednesday either. So it may be that we won't meet for until the Parliament reconvenes 2 weeks later. But that information will be forthcoming from the House Leader shortly. However, there is the possibility, given that we may not meet before the end of this formal sitting, before the budget of next year. And there's some housekeeping matters that we have left. The first thing is that we had asked for some questions. There were questions asked of the student of the Universal Service Fund, the hiring of a new GM or new ED. I don't know what the terminology is, what his post is, but we had asked for specifics on the hiring practices, etc. That information has not arrived. I understand it will arrive today, as will some additional information that was asked on NIDS. What I will do to members is ask the clerk, as soon as the information comes, that it be circulated, and then we can determine as a committee how we will treat with it going forward. With regard to national security and the used motor vehicles, we have gotten a letter signed by Dan McIntosh, the Permanent Secretary. It says it's re-update on matters relating to O'Brien's International Car Sales and Rentals Limited. It says here, reference is made to the matter at caption and to your email dated January 11th, 2019, wherein you requested a further update on the procurement of pre-owned vehicles for the Jamaica Constabulary Force and the mediation process in which the ministry is involved. We sincerely apologize for the delay in responding and now wish to advise as follows. 1. Pursuant to the settlement agreement, release and discharge, in brackets, the settlement agreement, between the Ministry and O'Brien's International Car Sales and Rentals Limited, which forms a part of the mediation process, we are expecting the vehicles by the 31st day of January 2019. 2. Should same not be delivered to us on the stated date, the Ministry will proceed to arbitration as per the settlement of dispute clause within our contract with O'Brien's International Car Sales and Rental Limited. Yours sincerely, Dan McIntosh. Members, I would say that I am not satisfied with this. For specific
just read that
reason.
first paragraph for me.
All right. There are 2 paragraphs.
Right.
Paragraph 1, and this was circulated to members.
Yes, I know.
Pursuant to the settlement agreement, release and discharge, this, in brackets, the settlement agreement, between O'Brien's, between the Ministry and O'Brien's International Car Sales and Rental Limited, which forms a part of the mediation process, we are expecting the vehicles by the 31st day of January 2019.
Did we get a copy of that settlement agreement?
No. I go back to the point I'm making. I'm very dissatisfied with this. As members will know, and a year ago in December, they indicated they were going to settlement and if mediation, and if they didn't get it by March, they were going to, all sorts of legal actions, etc. In April or May, I don't remember the exact month, we again we had a discussion here at committee to invite them to come. They told us they were in the middle of mediation. The committee met and said, we met in chambers, and we determined that we would give them a further 3 months. In September, we met again and asked about this, and we were told that mediation was underway and that we should get a result shortly. Now we're in January and we're getting this. And there are some questions that I have that are of grave interest to me, or of real interest to me and to the committee. Number one, at the root of it were whether the duties, including GCT and special consumption taxes, there were some issues as to what the ministry and the Ministry of Finance indicated were in the agreement. And on the other side of it, O'Brien's had not paid it on the vehicles that had come out in the first batch and was objecting to paying it in the second batch. Now, if you are saying that you're going to release the vehicles, they have not given us any information as to whether or not the duties are to be paid. We have no information as to what has happened with all the other issues that were involved in it, the bond that was placed, all these things. And quite frankly, it seems like they're almost saying that the vehicle should be released on the 31st day of January. You're almost indicating that there is an agreement, and you have not yet come back to us and indicated what the terms of that agreement is. This is, to me, unsatisfactory, and I would seek the guidance of committee to suggest how we should move forward with this.
Mr. Chairman, you will recall that there was some amount of reservation or hesitation on the part of some of us on the committee to go to mediation instead of taking straight legal action to recover the funds that the government has laid out for which it had no motor vehicles in return. The committee exercised great restraint to allow for a mutual resolution between the parties, that is the supplier and the government. So from where I am, the opportunity for I don't want to say non-legal, because mediation might also be a legal mechanism, right? But they not going the ultimate step now, it would be a dereliction of duty. Having given that latitude in the first instance for mediation, and coupled with the point you made, Chairman, about how long we have been deliberating on this matter, I think that the suggestion mentioned in the letter you read about arbitration is only another step of prolonging a conclusion of this matter, which have been long overdue in the first instance. It need to come to an immediate resolution.
Chair, I for one, in that last meeting, didn't feel that we should have done the in-camera session. But it begs the question to ask, who is it that the Ministry of National Security is trying to protect? Is it the taxpayers, or is it the supplier? I remember there are some questions of who is it that will take care of the cost of the demurrage, the storage of the vehicles, which when we last met was in millions of dollars.
Yeah.
Who, at what stage is it that the government of Jamaica, through the Ministry of National Security, draws the line in the sand and take action? It cannot be that we're speaking about the whole issue of crime, and this is going nearly 3 years now that this matter has been an issue. The same action that the government is taking in respect to Petrojam shows that they have the will to take action when necessary, be it right or wrong. Why is this issue taking so long? And I think, Chairman, that the ministry should be brought back here very soon to deal with the issue of this. This cannot be something that is dealt with in secret, because this has passed way past the time of this being dealt with urgency. You're talking about 200 million, you're talking about nearly 100 cars and only 30 delivered. It was claimed that 60 cars was sitting on the wharf. Yes. And we're still not sure if the 60 cars even exist or not. This is unacceptable, Chairman. Believe me. And I think we need to bring back the permanent secretary here to answer these questions, not in camera, but in the committee meeting here, that the public can know what is exactly happening with the taxpayers' money.
So, Rita?
That's the point I was going to make, Mr. Chairman. That's the point I was going to make, and I think Member Phillips would have. I think we should really invite the ministry back here to give some further clarification on what they have said in the letter. I believe that the subject matter really is the motor vehicles that were not delivered, and therefore we need to hear from them exactly.
Member Sir?
Chairman, it does appear as if there is a sleight of hand and delay tactics, and that has to be corrected, and it is very imperative that we bring back the Ministry of National Security here, because at a time when crime is on the rise, and myself in my own constituency, I'm short of cars for my 5 police stations, and that cannot be allowed to continue. So I would support the bringing back of the Ministry of National Security as early as possible to get the matters clarified.
All right. Yes, Member Campbell?
I think it may very well serve us well, because I don't know when we plan to have the next meeting, but we may want to frame a set of questions, because for the matter to have gone to mediation suggests to me that the matter is actually being litigated.
Being
litigated. Because if that is what is in fact being done, then we need to know. And I recall that the bond was going to be called, and so that
but we've got no information on that either. The point being, I think you're making the point that all the things that we were promised, we really have not gotten the information.
So in the interim, we can frame the set of questions and send it on for specific answers.
Right, maybe we can get some help from members, but I'm pulled together. But I think we should ask the questions. But again, time when possible, we really have to, they have to go on the agenda to invite them back. Members, just to close this point, just to recap, this was something that was mentioned 3 years ago. Great fanfare, 200 vehicles, etc. To date, we still have not, and despite all that has happened, we have not gotten the motor vehicles. It was referred over a year ago to the fraud squad and MOCA, and what has happened is that we wrote to, if members remember, we wrote to the police asking for a copy of the report. We have not received it. We heard the investigation was going on, and in the interim, taxpayers' money has been collected, held in a bond. They have not told us what is happening with it. I think it's something that we need to look at seriously, and we will frame the questions and bring them back as soon as possible.
Chair, just some housekeeping matters. Just for good order, it appears that we are taking this particular matter out of turn, because as it appears on the agenda,
Yes, remember, I'm giving, as I indicated before, we're at item 3. I'd actually given the welcome. This is a housekeeping matter, which I indicated. There are a number of things that are on our agenda which we are going to have to determine.
Well, it ought properly to come on the 7th.
And you and I had this discussion last week. I don't think we have to recap it. But as I made the point, many members leave before, and then when we now bring the question the following week, you say it was not deliberated. So in openness and transparency, Member Campbell, I have... Absolutely not. All right, so members, with that in mind, we will proceed as per the committee's wishes. All right, with that, members, we will invite in the Student Loan Bureau, the Ministry of Education, I understand is here, the Ministry of Finance, and University of the West Indies and the University of Technology.
All the parties that are outside?
Yeah.
Okay, because I was going to say, just invite, rather than have them sitting on the outside, since it's an open meeting.
No, that's everybody.
Okay.
We're only doing this issue today.
Okay.
Nothing else. Welcome back, FS. Always good to have you. Always good to have you. Yes, how are you? Yes, please just make yourselves comfortable. Good morning, everybody. FS, welcome. PS. Members, we had indicated in November, I think it was, that we had wanted to have a discussion with certainly the University of the West Indies and UTech, University of Technology, as well as the Student Loan Bureau on issues regarding the deregistering of students. At the time, there was a very topical issue with regard to the deregistering. There was also a lot of discussion about the funding of the Student Loan Bureau, as well as the subventions to our tertiary institutions. So we had determined that we had wanted to have a discussion. This discussion really is just more for information and for us to determine what recommendations we can make to the Parliament as to assisting both the tertiary institutions and the students who attend in cutting down these numbers of students that are being deregistered, and what role what can be done with the Students' Loan Bureau to maybe further empower them in this case. There was one issue that I think we had a little discussion about, which I think is, for me, a very topical one. And again, this is really a fact-finding and for us to verify certain things. But we had heard that one of the issues is that often with students that are unable to pay all the tuitions, they weren't allowed to do the exams. And there was a feeling that it would be better for them if they were allowed to do the exams, even if the grades were withheld or the certificates or whatever, because what you find, if that were the case, that you're going to find students who, if they come out and then have to go back, they'd have to go and do over the entire semester. And so really what we want is to have a discussion and see what the challenges are, what is the real situation, what can we do to help with that situation. I think the best way for us to proceed, members, as we discussed earlier, I think we will start with the Ministry of Education, who could probably give us a general overview, just to give us an idea of how you see it from the policy perspective. I would then ask the University of the West Indies and the University of Technology to give us their perspective. We could then turn it over, FS, to yourself and the Student Loan Bureau, and then at the end of that we can engage in a little dialogue to see what recommendations we could make. So with that, I welcome all of you to the committee. What I would do, PS, each person who leads the team, as I call on the institution, whoever is leading the team can identify themselves and introduce those members who are with them. And I would ask all members, when you're speaking, please identify yourself for the Hansard so that they can correctly attribute your comments. So with that, I will turn over to you, PS. Welcome.
Chairman and members, good morning to you. And certainly the Ministry of Education, Youth and Information welcomes the opportunity to discuss these approaches that we are using to reduce the instances of students being deregistered, and also to ensure greater access for our students at our universities. And so we have representatives from our ministry. Dr. Grace McLean, Chief Education Officer, is present. Dr. Felicia Marshall, she's the Assistant Chief Education Officer in charge of the tertiary unit. Mrs. Sonia Banton, our Principal Finance Officer. Mrs. Audrey Gentis McCallum, our Chief Audit Executive. Mr. Lincoln Johnson is our Senior Director, Compliance and Post-Audit. Dr. Damian Black is our Commissioner for the Jamaica Tertiary Education Commission. Given your comment that the university will introduce their members, I will just move on from there. The ministry was apprised, Chairman, in October 2018 of the deregistration of students from the University of the West Indies. And this
repeat, the ministry was
apprised in October 2018.
October.
Of the deregistration of students from the university. And that had to do with challenges with making plans to honor their obligations to the institution. And at the time, the stats was that this affected 800 students. So the ministry's initial response was to meet with the authorities of both universities and to have discussions in order to avert any crisis in the sector, as we have done in the past. These efforts were successful and resulted in the situation being abated somewhat. The ministry is about access to tertiary education. We deem it a priority for the growth and development of Jamaica, and we recognize that the 20% access to tertiary education now is not satisfactory, and certainly the minister is on record that we want to flip that to at least 80% in the short to medium term. So the committee should note that some measures may consider deregistration measures extreme and undesirable, and based on our conversation with universities, this is an action of last resort. The first step we notice that students are periodically reminded of their need to meet their obligations and to explore avenues available to subsidize their studies. The truth, Mr. Chairman, is that some students resist applying for a loan from the SLB, not just out of fear of onerous repayment terms, but rather from having established different priorities. Chairman, University of the West Indies reported that although the decision to deregister students was a last resort, the move resulted in some students making good their payments or initiating payment arrangements to satisfy their obligations to the university. And so the numbers are showing that from the 800 that were originally stated, They are just a little bit above 200 now in terms of students with challenges. The ministry has repeatedly articulated the position that there is general agreement that young persons must be encouraged and helped to pursue careers for personal and national development. At the same time, we must face the reality that tertiary level education is costly. It is a costly enterprise. The ministry supports the expansion of tertiary education, and the general philosophy is that students and parents should save towards tertiary education. At the same time, the ministry continues to support through a number of initiatives, including the JAMVAT program, the more vulnerable students to ensure and support their access to tertiary education. Just a brief synopsis, Mr. Chairman, on the JAMVAT program. It provides assistance for students for their tuition fees once they qualify for admission to these institutions. Where they are found financial challenge, they gain access to the program and they are provided with the opportunity to participate in the development of the nation's social capital through their contribution of 200 hours of public service. In response, the government pays 30% of the students' tuition costs, which should not exceed $350,000 per annum per student. It supports the need for more scholarship arrangements for tertiary institutions for marginalized young persons. A special fund or trust for the education of children at the tertiary level, we believe, is also a signal move by the government. The SLB provides funding to students, and so students are able to access that. And the report is that up to 98 to 99% of those students who seek access to Student Loan Bureau for tertiary funding are actually approved for funding.
Repeat that number?
Between 98 and 99% of students who actually apply for support from SLB actually get
99% of people, yes, who apply
to 99%
get funding?
That's the briefing that I have received on the matter. And so generally, Chairman, we welcome the opportunity to have discussions over these matters. And we have the principals of both the University of the West Indies and University of Technology here. And I will, with your leave, sir, hand over to the principal for the university to introduce his team. With your leave. University of the West Indies.
All right, so, okay. So
as you had said.
Absolutely.
Right.
So.
Thank you, Chairman. Good morning, colleagues.
And welcome.
My name is Dale Weber. I am the principal of the Mona campus of the University of the West Indies. With me this morning, Professor Ian Boxill, Deputy Principal, Dr. Camille Bell Hutchinson, our Registrar, and Mr. Nigel Logan, our Bursar. The University of the West Indies is very firm in its belief that access to tertiary education is important. In fact, our new strategic plan 2017-2022 speaks to access alignment and agility as the AAA strategy that we employ. Growing from a university of only 33 students in 1948 to 70 years later, here we are in 2018, we celebrated 70 years of leadership and service with 18,000 students. As of this year, yesterday's registration is 19,100, so the numbers continue to grow. We've been able to offer this education not just at the university, but we've expanded to our Western Jamaica campus, and we have now committed to an online delivery using our open campus as well as the Mona campus facilities, and we are convinced that moving forward, we will need to do more online to try and get to the wider cross-section of Jamaica and indeed the world using specialized programs. We've just committed as of this year to have 2 programs per year go online so that you can be at the University of the West Indies wherever you are, not just on the campus itself. The issue of deregistration is one that started as far back as 2008. Myself and the Deputy Principal are recently appointed. We've been with the university for 30 years, but we've recently been appointed Principal and Deputy Principal. But our campus registrar has been our registrar for 11 years, and I would like to ask her to just outline the deregistration policy and what has happened over the last 10 years in terms of changes where we've softened the policy to where we are now.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everyone. So as the principal said, yes, the issue of deregistration, or it probably wasn't called deregistration at the time, but
Sorry, could you identify yourself for the...
Camille Bell Hutchinson, Campus Registrar, UWI Mona. So the issue of deregistration has been with us for a while, or if I would clarify that, students until 2010 were not able to sit exams unless they had financial clearance. They would have been getting a physical exam card at that time, and if the exam card turned up blank, they wouldn't have been able to sit exams. Now, that financial clearance was not just to do with tuition fees. It was to do with any outstanding fees, whether it was tuition or residence. Somewhere around 2010, the then principal felt that it would be better for us to try to help the students to pay, along the way. So they may not have had it at the time that the exam timetable is out and they're getting ready to do exams, but they may come up with it before they sit exams. So at that time, we decided to soften the deregistration policy and allow students to pay at any time that they found the money. This sometimes took them way down to the wire, so sometimes just before exams, some would turn up. But then there were others who would be in the system. We knew they were in the system, they weren't blocked, and then they weren't able to do exams. And as I think you mentioned earlier, the first time that this, I would say, blew up on us is in 2012, when there were a number of students who we allowed to remain in the system in the hope that they would be able to pay the fees right just before exams. And that didn't occur. And a number of students were blocked from sitting exams. Some of you may remember it was a riotous affair with our guild. I think probably the first time since the Rodney riots. We had the guild really taking a stand at that point, disrupted exams, and felt that it was unfair. So in truth, what we had thought was a way to support them kind of worked against us in the sense that they were blocked just before the exam. The government also intervened and said, well, is there another way to do this? We discussed this with the guild, and at that time, because it was all the fees that were outstanding that created the issue, one of the decisions or one of the agreements we made with the Guild of Students is that we would separate residence fees from tuition fees for the purposes of tuition, for studies, for exams. And so at that time, we decided that the halls of residence would more closely monitor the payment of hall fees, which is in itself is also a high receivable, and we would not block students who were outstanding for hall fees, but we would find a way to monitor the tuition fees. Chair, the very recommendation you made, we attempted to do that. So what we did at the time was to let them progress in the semester and block from results and certificates for those finalizing students. We have, I would say, thousands of certificates in our exam center still that persons have gone through the system, not collected the certificates. I don't know how they've managed throughout their careers, but we have several hundred. It would take a project team to count the number of certificates we still have at the university for uncollected certificates for students with outstanding bills. The other thing about not giving the grades, that we found didn't work as well, because sometimes they found out the grades by other means, and so we had to revisit the policy and said what else we could do. The then principal introduced what we have as a scanning system, which is like what you'd have at the supermarket. So we introduced payment plans, and we said, okay, you pay 25% down, and then you pay the balance up to the period of exams, which would normally be in November. And we thought that would help. We encouraged them to go to the Student Loan Bureau to access loans. A number of our students are they're not very risky in terms of trying to get loans. The University of the West Indies have been encouraging them, have been counseling them to access more ways of financing their education. That has not worked very well. So we decided that we would ask for the payment plans, and also another set was introduced where we allowed them what we may want to call a free semester. So they then were able to progress. They were able to progress in a semester without paying that semester's fee. But in the following semester, they would not be able to register until the outstanding tuition fees were paid. And we thought that that was meeting them at least halfway. That has worked to some extent, but the receivables shot up. So we found that for students who were finalizing students, so they would pay for semester. Thank you, Chair. So they would pay for semester one's fee in semester two, but then they would be able to progress through semester two, and the next time we would see fees would be in September if they are returning. What happened to us is that we found out, or we realized in tough ways, that those who were finalizing didn't pay semester two's fees and didn't come back and didn't pay the balance. So the receivables really skyrocketed. As a result of that, we had to again look back on the policy and put a new policy in place for finalizing students. We asked finalizing students, they could do a payment plan as the others are, but we wanted them to complete their fees before they sat their final exams if they were not returning to the university. That was introduced, I would think, 2 years ago. That worked well. In fact, I think the year that the government intervened, I think the PS spoke to that, was the first year that that was put in place, and they intervened and supported a number of finalizing students. At that time, we started out with maybe nearly 2,000. It dropped to about 800, and in fact, even with the understanding that the government was going to support them, most of the students actually covered their fees before they sat exam. And now it is not an issue really for finalizing students. We send out notices from the June preceding the academic year, and we give consistent deadlines. This year, a new policy was introduced when our new principal started, and this policy related to first-year students. And the belief of the management was that in entering the university, we felt it was reasonable to expect that you knew where the first semester's fee would be found, not the whole year's fee, the first semester's fee. So what we asked our new students to do this year is to either enter a payment plan where you pay down 25% of the semester's fee and continue that payment to complete before your first set of exams. You could either do that, or you would have to pay the semester's fee before sitting exams. That's where we are with that policy at this point. We had over 2,000 students at the beginning of our exams who were needing to be clear. That number has fell significantly, and the data we have provided shows, I think, that we have just about 300 students who never did find that fee at all. The total population of our first-year students was about 6,000. So, Chair, where we are now, we have 3 policies in existence, one for our first years, one for our finalizing, and the one that has always been there for our second continuing students, where they go through a semester without paying, but in order to proceed to the next semester, you have to pay the outstanding fees. That's for our continuing students. Our first year students, we're asking to pay the fees before exams, either through the semester, either through a payment plan, or by paying the entire semester's fee. And we do the same for our finalizing students. In that way, we're hoping that the huge receivables we have will fall. At the same time, Chair, I think I must say that we also have facilities. We encourage students, not only for Students' Loan Bureau, there are scholarships, and we refer them to our financial aid office to ensure that they are making full use of all the available sources for funding. And we do try to consistently keep in touch with them, because our view is that we want the students to complete their education, but at the same time we have to be very mindful of the dire financial state that our university is in at this time.
Okay, University of Technology.
Thank you, Chairman. Good morning, Chairman. Good morning, members. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. The University of Technology, Jamaica, is grateful for the opportunity to take part in this important PAAC meeting on access to education for students at the tertiary level. We have received 3 requests for information from the PAAC and have sought to respond to the items raised in each request. The documentation from UTech sets out responses to the questions received. The university is committed to ensuring access to tertiary education and seeks to retain students when they enter the university community. We recognize, however, that most of our students face financial challenges on the way to completing their studies. With this in mind, we have sought to put in place a system which allows students to remain at university subject to conditions that are compatible with the prudent management of the institution. We seek, as far as possible, to take our students through to completion. Education, in our view, is key to self-actualization and personal development. Equally, education is central to national development and socio-economic advancement. These core considerations, together with the need to preserve the financial viability of the university, guide our policy on registration of students. So what is that policy? The university does not deregister students once they have registered. The main elements of our system for the registration of students are as follows. First, all students are required to pay an enrollment commitment fee at the start of the semester. $28,000 for new students, $25,000 for returning students. Second, after paying this enrollment commitment fee, the student is required to pay fees in full by a specified date called the census date. For semester 1 of this academic year, the census date was October 26, 2018. So you start in late August, you have near to the end of October to pay the fee. Thus, students had about 8 weeks from the start of teaching in which to pay their fees. Third, if a student is unable to pay fees, she or he may enter into a payment plan with the university. Usually, for a payment plan, the student is called upon to pay 55% of the fee and undertake to pay the remainder at a later date. With a payment plan in place, the student has rights of a fully paid up student and most importantly, may take examinations. And once you take the examinations, you are fully entitled to the results of the examination. Fourth, if a student is unable to pay fees by the census date and does not enter into a payment plan, he or she may still take examinations at the end of the semester. The student may do this by paying fees in full up to 1 week before the final examinations. The student who takes this approach is required to make a late fee payment of about $8,000. So you can disregard the system and up to 1 week before the exams, turn up with the fees plus $8,000 and you are allowed to take the examination. Fifth, students who cannot afford to pay their fees are encouraged to seek assistance. The university is grateful to the Students' Loan Bureau for the assistance provided by the Bureau to our students. For the academic year 2017 to 18, for example, the SLB provided loans to about 3,176 UTech students out of a population of about 11,500 students. We are also grateful to the government of Jamaica, local private sources, and international private sources. For 2017 to 18, the government of Jamaica provided assistance to 562 students. Local private sources assisted 288 through the institution, and 55 students received international support. In addition, scholarships are available to students. In 2017 to 18, 1,157 students obtained scholarships. Sixth, the university also seeks to provide financial assistance. For 2017 to 18, the university provided 109 scholarships. I should note that on Friday, this Friday coming, we are presenting 60 additional scholarships to mark the 60th anniversary of the university, 60 at $100,000 each. In 2017 to 18, 331 students took part in the university's Earn and Study program, working within the university, and 2,212 students received welfare assistance from the university. In sum, for 2017 to 18, approximately 7,779 students out of 11,500, approximately 7,779 out of 11,500 at UTEC, received some form of assistance with their studies through institutional sources. As to the financial value, for 2017 to 18, external and internal scholarships amounted to more than $47 million, student welfare about $23 million, and Earn and Study about $24 million, making a total of about $94 million in assistance to students. I should make a few additional points about access. One is that some students at the university who have not paid fees until late in the semester have hitherto not been able to gain access to online resources at the university. This policy has been changed by the university's academic board from this semester onwards. So going forward, as long as a student has paid the enrollment commitment fee, that student should not be disadvantaged in the period before she or he pays the full fee. Our records indicate that for 2017-18, 595 students who entered the UTEC system did not complete their enrollment and did not therefore take their examinations. We are concerned about this number and regard it as far too high. This is one factor which has caused us to move towards making online material available to all who pay the enrollment commitment fee, even though there are suggestions that this move could affect the university's cash flow. Finally, I should note that the university is funded primarily by student fees. In very broad outline, the university receives a subvention from the government of Jamaica of the order of about $2 billion. 17-18, it was $2.266 billion. But the university has expenses of the order of $7 billion. So we receive 2, we have expenses of 7. The bulk of the difference, approximately $4 billion, is required to cover costs from student fees. The difference is 5, and we have third sources for about 1, and so we need to get $4 billion from student fees to run the university. The university has sought to obtain an increase in the government of Jamaica subvention, particularly in light of our desire to promote parity and fairness among tertiary level institutions. But this effort is yet to receive financial support. And Mr. Chairman, I must apologize because I did not introduce the members of my team at the outset. And I would like to do so now, if I may. On the far left of this row is Mrs. Mercedes Dean, who is the university registrar. Mr. Paul Brissett is immediately beside me. He is the Chief Business and Finance Officer. And Ms. Jennifer Hibbert is immediately behind me. And Ms. Hibbert is the Chief Operations and Projects Officer. And if I may, Chairman, I would just like to mention 2 or 3 points of information arising from our written report to the Permanent Secretary concerning the affairs of this meeting. The first is that we were asked to indicate the percentage of fees owed to the institution The fees owed to the institution as a percentage of the institution's total revenue. And that figure for 2016 to 17 is 13%. For 2017 to 18, that figure is 12%. And as of December 2018, that figure is 19%. So the fee, 19. So the fees owed to us are between 12 and 19% for different years. Another quick point, Chairman, is that for the year 2016 to 17, in the information we have provided, there is no recorded indebtedness for students because the government of Jamaica has committed itself to covering student liability for fees for this semester, subject to certain conditions. So this commitment was made in the period leading up to student examinations in semester 2 of 2016 to 17, and we are grateful to the government of Jamaica for that intervention. Another point, in terms of students who have enrolled and have not completed, for 2017 to 18, the total figure was 595 students out of 11,500 students. And finally, in terms of the value of scholarships, I mentioned already, but I'll reiterate. For 2017 to 18, $47,400,416 were provided in scholarships, internal and external. $23 million was provided for student welfare, and $24 million was paid out for the Earn and Study program. So we are trying our best to facilitate the students, but we also have to be mindful of cash flow and receivables. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Bro. FS?
Okay, good morning. Darlene Morrison, Minister of Finance, and the Students' Loan Bureau is here as well. It's Monica Brown, company. The Ministry of Finance and the SLB actually came to the PAAC today in relation to responses we had provided for questions asked, which were not specifically related to UWI and UTEC. So we don't really have a position per se on the issue that you are discussing. I can indicate, though, that with respect to the Students' Loan Bureau's provision of loans, the 98.8% and 99.2% UWI and UTEC is what the approval rate is for loans that have gone through the full application process. That was in for this year for 2018-19. For 2017-18, it was at 99.6 and 99.3 UWI and UTEC respectively. In 2018-19, this would have represented, the total applications that completed would have represented 4,457 for UWI and 3,833 for UTEC. Okay, disbursed, okay. To date, okay, disbursed to date. There are more applications than that would have initially been made, but as we would have indicated in the prior appearance, not all applicants complete the process. So the figures, the 99 and 98, are in relation to the completed applications. That's it.
Okay, does the Student Loans Bureau want to, or is that covered? Is everything covered there?
It basically covers the issues, disbursements, UTEC, UE, and as the FS said, the disbursements to date for UE Mono, $559 million, and for UTEC for $44 million. And disbursement continues throughout the academic year. And disbursement is also subject to receipt of confirmation of registration from the schools. So as soon as we receive confirmations of registration, we are usually put in a position to disperse. So we continue that process.
Just some clarity. What percentage of the tuition do you fund? If I'm studying and my school fees are $300,000 a year or a semester, and I come to you, what happens next?
For the government-sponsored programs, those are funded 100%.
Government-sponsored programs.
Right.
That is. Could you just clarify for us?
Well, in the case of UWI, for example, the social science programs, those come under the government subsidy, and they can correct me if I'm wrong, but this is the premise on which we have been operating over the years. For the traditional programs, those have been subsidized. Those are under the subsidized facilities. More recently, in the last 8 years, 10 years, they have introduced a number of full cost programs. So there are 2 streams for the medical program, for example. The regular program that is subsidized by government, I think that is about 600,000 for the year, whereas for the full cost program, it's about, it works out to Jamaica dollar about 3.6 million or so. So the Students' Loan Bureau provides a maximum of $1 million under the targeted
per year
for the year for the non-GOG subsidized program. However, they can also access the pay-as-you-study program and get another $1 million. But that facility, the latter facility, has to be paid back from salary each month. So each student under the non-GOG sponsored facilities can access a maximum of $1 million under the targeted program, that's a traditional loan that SLB offers, as well as $1 million under the pay-as-you-study program, which is salary deducted.
Just one question would come to me. If that is the case, and you're saying a number of these programs is 100% in the government targeted programs, and we'll go into that in a little more detail. At the start of this discussion, the permanent secretary indicated that 90 to 99% of the students who applied got through, were approved.
For loans.
So my question is, where then would the problem be? Because if you're able to be in a program, if 98% of them are getting funding of the applicants, well, that's what I'm trying to clarify.
Yeah, let me
so
clarify.
No, I need some clarity there, because my problem is just if you hear the words, there shouldn't be a problem, because if somebody has a challenge, they apply, and if 98 to 99% of them are successful, then they would get the support. Now, if you're getting the support, where's the fallout?
The issue is, although 98, 99% is approved, the take-up is roughly 80%. So some students opt not to go forward with the application process in terms of completing, providing the documentation to allow us to disburse.
When you, well, no, we just, but let them.
No, I think.
Well, let them clarify.
No, I think, all right, let us say UWI. What percentage of those entering UWI would have come to the student loan and be apply and approved? So you have 100,000 students entering in this academic year. What percentage of those are aided by the student loan?
So
Chairman.
for me? Oh, okay.
Chairman, our numbers tell us we have 22.5% of university students, University of West Indies students, applying for the students' loan.
Applying?
In total.
So that's like a quarter.
And
apply.
Right, and 98% of them are successful by what we've heard from the Students' Loan Bureau.
Yeah,
but less than a quarter of them apply. They are loan averse in terms of investing in their own education.
So the majority of those entering the university
do not
don't
apply.
They come
Do
on
not
their
apply.
own financing.
Yeah, but I'm trying to get to the root of it, because if students apply, they want to get a tertiary education. They're either finding the tuition on their own, and they're getting to the point where they can't afford it. Then the obvious course would be to go for a loan. So I'm just trying to say, you're saying only 25% apply. Is it that the terms of application, what is necessary, it makes it so difficult that many of them don't apply because they cannot meet the criteria for application? Or is it that they just don't feel like applying and would prefer not to go on?
Each year we get on average 14,000 applications, and the approval rate is very high. The take-up rate, though, in terms of students following through with the process and completing is below 90%. There are students who have not applied to the Students' Loan Bureau. So in the case of UWI, of the 19,000 students, we got applications from 4,457 of them for 2018-19. So there are a number of students who are not interested in getting a loan to pay their tuition, although they have no other financial arrangement to pay their fees. They're not interested in getting loans in a number of cases because it would appear they do not want to have the responsibility of paying back debt. So they leave students' loan as a last resort. So if they don't have to apply, they do not apply. They try to find other ways of paying their fees before they come to the Students' Loan Bureau. But the facility is there, and each year, consistently, approximately 14,000 or so of them access the loans.
Chairman.
So, yes, but just to clarify, so you're saying that a number of these persons are now getting to the point where they are having difficulty, their exams are coming up, they owe some funds. Are they at that point where it is becoming an issue? When they go to the, you had said, the financial aid office, at that point, would they be referred to SLB? And you're saying that for many of these students, rather than taking the SLB, they come out of the program? Is that what we're understanding, or is there something else that we're missing?
Which is what I would like to probe a little bit.
Yeah,
Chairman.
Member Paul.
Yes. I am confused. As Member of Parliament, and this is one of the categories that Professor Vassiano didn't mention, as Member of Parliament, I contribute substantially to tuition costs for students who live in my constituency. And next time you speak, Professor, apart from government, you should also mention that, you know, we as MPs, we do make our contribution, but
if I may,
invariably, no, it's all right, it's all right.
Just to say that you are counted among local private sources.
Repeat that. Local private sources.
Yeah, we like to be in a different category, but because we have to get the endorsement of our electors, so people should know this. But invariably, when students come to me for assistance, I always inquire of them of their responsibility, and that a tertiary education is an investment
in yourself. And they say to me that they have tried the route of the Students' Loan Bureau and have been frustrated. So my question is, when is an application an application? They complain, for example, that in trying to get guarantors, they are frustrated because family members, I gather, can't be guarantors, and a whole heap of other things associated with the application process. So is it when you receive a properly completed application that it is regarded as an application? What of those who come in and they want to pursue a loan but cannot because on the application form there are certain requirements that initially they can't meet? I inquire of everybody because I don't believe, because we can't afford it now, one day this country should be able to provide free university education to those who need it. But I do believe that in the same way that I'm contributing, the individual students should make a contribution. And the way to do so for the poor student is through the Students' Loan Bureau. And perhaps just to complete my second question, your public education program used to be quite active, and I see so many ministries now advertising all kinds of things that I don't believe really require public education. But certainly the role of the Students' Loan Bureau, your process, ought to be the subject of appropriate public education. All I see from time to time are your delinquencies, which is another matter of interest, I'm sure, for this committee, and probably you could comment on that. But, so I'm confused as MP. I contribute substantially every year, and Professor Vassiano, yeah, just put a category for members of parliament. That's how we are able to convince people to vote for us.
All right, so, yes.
The applications that we get at the Students' Loan Bureau, those are done online. So the students apply and they pay a fee, and their application is accepted and processed. They also need to furnish guarantors, and the policy requires 2 guarantors. More recently, that has been adjusted to allow for 1 guarantor in instances where persons are not able to come up with 2 guarantors. There are also instances where persons who do not have guarantors are allowed to access a student loan. There's a special facility for that through the appeals committee process. So we do accommodate students who have difficulties providing guarantors. We also allow for corporate guarantors, and we have seen where some schools have stood as guarantors and some other entities. So the application process is fairly straightforward. It requires that you furnish some documents to support your application, TRN, identification, that sort of thing. The process, in my view, is not onerous, but some students do not really treat it with the level of seriousness that they ought to treat it with, bearing in mind that they, in a number of cases, do not necessarily want a loan. So when they go to their MPs and complain that they cannot get through to the SLB, it is not necessarily so, because we are very accommodating in terms of allowing access, because we recognize the importance of persons lifting their social status, benefiting from economic mobility through tertiary education. And that is what we are there for. So we are very accommodating. I have the loan processing manager here with me as part of the team, and his team is very, very accommodating in terms of allowing persons to access students' loan.
But specifically, is there a time frame within which persons can apply? In other words, I get back to the point that we're trying to target today. There are students that are being deregistered. So let's say I run into trouble in November, going into exams or in the second semester, or whatever it is. I've not applied for a student loan at the start of the year, but I find myself in challenges. Can I apply?
The application process normally opens around mid-February and it goes on to the end of May. However, there's
mid-February till May for the September term.
Right. Because we need time to process the application.
Absolutely, but I'm saying if someone, so you have February to May, so you have that 3-month period.
Yes.
During which you encourage people to apply. But I get into trouble in the midst of my process. I've run up into a wall, and my last resort is student loan. What do I do at that point?
Yes, and I was going on to say, in addition to the formal period, February to May for applications, there's also a late application period, which is continuing even now. So students who did not apply for the 2018-19 period and are late, and in exceptional cases now we may allow, and we have been allowing late applications up to now. So students who come to us, we find a way of accommodating them. So that's for the targeted facility. There's a late fee attached, of course. For the pay-as-you study facility, that is available all year round.
What would that late fee be, just as a matter of interest?
The late fee, I think, is about $5,000. $5,000.
Okay. No,
right.
But let me just go back, and I think members, I think it's a critical point. We are looking at students who at some point might run into a challenge. To me, those are the very students that you're hoping that a student loan bureau, if there possibilities, would. So if I was in trouble, especially if I'm near the end of my course or whatever, and I realize I'm in trouble, the course of action would be student loan bureau. So do you get a lot of those applications for persons? We had heard a number of students, I think somewhere between 300 and 500, I've been hearing the figure around, that got into problem. Do you get this surge of applications around that period of time, or are you finding that they do not apply?
I do not think those are the ones who apply, because if the period for application opens in May, and this is now January, February, and they have not applied for a student's loan, it means that they're not interested in applying for a student's loan.
So you're saying
yes?
So you're really saying that the majority of these students that are in trouble you are not seeing them come to the Student Loan Bureau?
Well, I guess some of them would have come, but not a whole lot. For the late application period, I think about 1,000 to 2,000 persons would have submitted late application. So those persons are having difficulties at the university and want to access a student loan may be included in those late applications.
1,000 is a lot. We had heard between 300 and 500 persons who were in trouble. So
but this is one institution, so this is for the
but I'm just saying, so
system.
If we extrapolate, now if you're saying you're getting 1,000, what is the approval rate of that within that 1,000 late application? Do you have that?
Most of those.
Is it the same 98%?
Yes, most of those usually get approved. The majority of those get approved.
All right.
Yes. And I was going on to say, in terms of the late applications, the pay-as-you study facility is available all year round. So persons who find themselves in a problem and want to access a student loan can, in fact, access a student loan. However, it has to be salary deducted. So somebody has to be working and is able to pay monthly for that loan.
All right. Member Stewart, is there anybody? Member Phillips. Member Dunn.
Thank you, Chairman. Through you to our professors Bassiani and Weber. What percentage of our students who are deregistered actually return to complete their degrees at their universities? And to the FS.
Wait, hold on, one at a time. You can just ask. I'll allow you can go on after.
Chairman.
You're asking this specifically of UE or UE and UTech? Both? Just.
Chairman,
yes, Prof.
We would have to go through the entire university cycle of a student to see if and when they completed their programs. But what we can offer is, of the 827 who were deregistered at the start of the process, 65% of those found a way to make a payment and get back on track. So we would think that 65% of them got back into the system at that time.
And you're saying you're down at about 300 that still have a challenge, if I remember correctly.
Chairman, I would recall that we do not deregister persons. So for our system, there would be some people who have just not paid any fees at all in a particular semester, or they would have paid just the enrollment commitment fee and would not have done anything else. They wouldn't be allowed to do the examinations, but quite a few of them come back. We don't have that precise figure now, but some of them would come back in a subsequent semester because of how our programs are structured. You can come back.
But bro, all right, understanding what you're saying that, say I'm a student, I go through and at the end of the semester I've not been able to pay. Yes. I'm in my second year,
yes,
halfway through a course. I'm unable to pay.
Yes.
Exam time comes up.
Yes.
You don't deregister me, but you're saying that I'm not allowed to do the exam?
No, Chairman, with respect. For a student to be in a position of not being enrolled to do the exam, that student would have had to ignore making a payment up to 55%. That student would have had to choose not to speak to anybody in our Office of Finance.
Oh, no, I was only saying, I thought that's what you said. No, I thought you had said you don't deregister, but some were not allowed to take the exam. That's what I was trying to explore.
Yes, and I'm identifying the persons who would be in that category. It's a person who has not paid any fees other than the enrollment commitment fee, which is $25,000. So that person would not only have not paid, but would have distanced him or herself from the system, because we make payment plans with the students. You come to us, I'm sure we recommend sometimes you go to the Students' Loan Bureau, but it's also the case that we make payment plans with individuals. So those people may have decided, for this semester, I'm not going to proceed. I don't have the money. I don't see how I'm going to get the money for this semester. But I will come back next semester. And that happens.
Chairman, just one additional question. How do you engage these students? Do you reach out to them, or they would have to reach out to you?
No, we reach out to them. We provide information as to the date by which payments are due and indicate if you can't make the payment, come in and talk to our Office of Finance about a payment plan. We reach out to them through various means, social media and other means of communication.
Okay.
Yes.
Prof.
Chairman, I'd just like to add, I think both institutions go a remarkable way to reach out to students from as early as possible. We have at least 6 notices that go out to students from August saying what they can do, what the options are. We have 3 offices, the Office of the Registrar, Admissions, you have the Bursary has a customer service, and there's the Office of Student Financing. So there's a reach out, and the first question is always, have you applied for a student's loan? And there is then the various combinations. But we get good information from that communication. For instance, we learned that the student's loan actually offered loans at preferential rates under STEM programs, which made some students then reconsider and apply to get such an advantage. But on the other side, we also heard that the student's loan would only loan for upcoming semesters. If they had an arrears balance, the loan would not allow them to take that arrears down.
Okay, Member Stewart hasn't finished.
Thank you, Chairman. Pierce, the Minister of Education in his pronouncements recently spoke to the fact that he would love to see or get 80% of the country's tertiary students at the tertiary level. Has there been a costing been done and to the PS? Is there any consideration been given from the Ministry of Finance level for increasing the amount of funds that go to the Student Loan Bureau?
Mr. Chairman, the pronouncement made would support tertiary funding policy that we are putting together. And that would involve the overall cost of funding up to 80% of those students that we're thinking about, and also to earmark funding in particular areas, especially the areas of STEM, as would have been outlined. So that study is still being done, and we are putting together the documentation for a cabinet submission, and thereafter we'll be able to give the full costing as to what that will be like. But the vision is that we will have those 80% students, 8% of our students registered in our tertiary institutions and graduating fully trained and certified at the tertiary level.
In tertiary institutions across the board?
Across the board. Across the board. Right now, the stats are showing that.
You said you're at 20% now?
We're at 20%, roughly 20%.
Just running some rough figures, and if you're going to move up, you're talking 4 times the amount. You are taking
4 times the
80.
amount, yes.
And your total subvention to tertiary institutions now is how much?
For the 2 universities?
About 10 billion?
About 17 billion.
17 billion.
Yes.
So you're looking to find about another 50 billion, roughly. Have you mentioned this to the Financial Secretary?
I am saying, Mr. Chairman, already.
This is a matter of interest.
No, but already we have the CAP program and the occupational studies program that will give them an associate degree, and we are.
No, but I'm just making the point that if you have a rough figure and you're looking
but Chairman, I wouldn't calculate it like that.
I'm just giving it a rough.
Because there's actually already funding in place that we are targeting for students who are doing their first 2 years in our community colleges and in our high school programs. So it is not a case where we multiply by 4. That's not what the math would look like.
Okay.
So because there is already funding being injected into the system as we speak towards assisting students to gaining that tertiary education. So we're not going to be starting from 0. We are somewhere down the wicket already.
All right. Okay. No, 1 second. Is it? I have member done before.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and good morning, everyone. I think I was remarking in the corridor, as a beneficiary of education from the 2 tertiary institutions present here today, UWI and UTEC, I'm very appreciative of of the services of the individuals within the institution and the quality of students that they're graduating each year. Just in listening, however, the problem, Mr. Chairman, seems to be in the ability of students to access financing for education, because with all due respect, both institutions requires funding to carry out their affairs and to ensure that they graduate the quality of candidates that they want from their institution. So my suggestion, well, one question is for the Student Loan Bureau in particular. I do not know, and if you can provide me with the answer, do you go into the high schools on a regular basis to promote student loans? That's number one. Because, I mean, I'm from a poor background, and I remember when I was going to tertiary institution, I never knew anything about loans. So, have we educated persons enough that loans is not loans in themselves, but loans are investment in the individual, and therefore they would appreciate that fact that they are invested in their future. So they have to buy into that process of wanting to invest in their future. So have we spent enough time educating our students about this investment? Number two, for the high schools again, is it that but as a course, I know you're going periodically with job fairs and education fairs, but is that sufficient enough, or there should be something in the grade level and our sixth form, especially first year, that directly targets students to this particular facility, and therefore they become more inclined to rather than averse to accessing in the particular loans. And the third thing is that I can see where you in particular has really tried various different methods of trying to deal with this issue. But UTEC seem to have something which I don't know if you will want to emulate, although your governance structure is a little different and you have to answer to different players rather than in the case of UTEC, there's answers to UTEC and the government of Jamaica. But UTEC has gone further of not deregistering students, which is so good, because at least you allow that student through the entire education process. But the important thing is that, and I hope this is not lost in at all, because although you take them through this process of not deregistering them or deregistering them, they need to understand that paying the fee is important, and the fact that they have gone through and not being deregistered is not an attempt to give them a certification without the investment that they are supposed to make. So there's just a caution on that. I'm not sure how you have managed that process very well. But in terms of student loan, though, could you just answer, do you have this structured program within the high schools?
The Students Loan Bureau have a program where we go into the high schools each year, and based on the record for the 2018 period, we did over 18 institutions, most of which are high schools. So we go into the high schools across the length and breadth of Jamaica to sensitize the students in relation to the products and services of the Students Loan Bureau and the options that they have for financing their tertiary education. So that facility is in place. The Public Relations and Public Education Department has charge of that function. So yes, that happens on an ongoing basis. And the ramping up of that program is in recognition of the need to provide the information to these young people so they're aware of the options. A number of us are from rural area, and when I was coming up through high school, I wasn't aware that there was a student loan bureau that we could access for funds. And a number of my colleagues can attest to that as well. And in recognition of that, we recognize the need to step up the program of going into the schools and as part of our public education campaign. So yes, we have been going into the schools. We did about 80 last year, and about 90% of that was the high schools.
Can I just follow up with something else, please? Sorry. For the persons, I think the chairman and maybe member Phillips had asked a question. You know, what about the persons who would have missed that initial application period, which is in February, up to February, and they were dependent on other methods of finance their education. They're down to the wire now at the start of school, and there's nothing in place. The question is there a registration desk at the institutions that facilitate the students who would have missed that particular period? So at both UA and UTech, during that registration period, is there a desk for student loan present at that point?
There's no desk at the institution per se now, but during the peak period, there is a partnership with the institutions where the SLB officers go in and they assist in processing the applicants, accepting documents, etc. But for persons who would want to access the Students' Loan Bureau and a loan at this time, they would need to come directly to us.
Chairman, might I just as a suggestion going forward, the University of the West Indies would like to therefore offer for the Students' Loan Bureau to accompany the University of the West Indies, and I'm sure my colleagues at UTech would do the same. We go to a number of schools on our recruitment drives, and we do have a section that says financing your education. But it would be so good to have somebody from the Students' Loan Bureau with us on that tour to be able to feed it at the very start.
I think you're correct. I think maybe all the institutions could look at it. I think one of the difficulties that may arise with students is a lot of these applications are made online. Am I correct? Yes, and the process, if there are persons in these institutions who can guide students as to the needs and the way to do it, it may be helpful given the situation. So I think your suggestion is timely. Professor.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to thank Principal Weber for that suggestion as well. Yes, it's something that we would embrace enthusiastically. I wanted to say, though, that in our system, we encourage responsibility because we insist that the student must come in to complete a payment plan. So with reference to the member's comments about the caution, we are mindful of it and we appreciate the reminder. One of the things that we have found concerning students and loans is that the student's loan is likely to be the first major transaction that someone graduating from high school will enter into. So even though they will know about the concept of the student's loan, there is a fear which comes from not understanding how these things work. So we find, for instance, that we have to sometimes encourage students to say, no, you will be able to pay back this money when you have graduated, because they are fearful that they can't meet that commitment. Others also feel, well, if I can get the money from other sources. No, because in fairness, and I mentioned local private sources a while ago, the MPs make a major contribution. We have also had commitments from the government of Jamaica.
Yeah, continue, Prof.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, we received from MPs, from our parish council, members and from private enterprise as well. and we're very grateful for that on behalf of the students. But we are aware that because, and UTEC does it too, but because there are these alternative sources, some students go to the alternative sources and avoid the Students' Loan Bureau. So for UTEC, it's about 32% of our students who go through the Students' Loan Bureau. When we 32%. When we look at the situation on the ground, we feel that it should be more. Yes, but so there needs to be a conscious effort to keep convincing people year after year.
Yeah, I think that's a very valid point. Members, in other words, I think the Student Loan Bureau, the extent to which they can go out and sensitize would be very helpful. But there's another point too, that a number of the students are saying that in that sort of area that you'd almost call the university village, the sort of Mona and the apartments and so forth, that the cost of residency, of accommodation for these students over the years has risen quite a bit, and there's also that cost. Is that dealt with separately, or is it now something that is almost enjoined to the tuition fees?
Chair, as we mentioned earlier, for Mona, we have separated the two fees. It used to be joined so that once you had any outstanding fee for the university, it would affect your progression. We have separated our hall fees from our tuition fees, and further, we have a number of our halls now, we have them paying monthly, which they found easier to manage than a one-off payment.
So roughly what is it now?
So for the academic year, for let us say a double room on AZ Preston, it's $198,000 for the year. We moved to something like our newest halls in our Georgia Lane Hall. A double room is $30,000 per month. So we have varying rates. We have Mary C. Cole at $183,000 per year. And what we've been trying to do is to encourage even the payment plans with our halls. That's managed by our Office of Student Services and Development. So we're trying to find ways in which the students are better able to manage those payments. We still do, as I said, do have a high receivable for our halls of residence. Yeah. But when the fees are set, and that's done in conjunction with the bursary, with the Guild of Students, and with the Office of Student Services and Development, they try to be as competitive as we can be with the accommodation surrounding the university. But as you know, there are other amenities, other activities that we do. The students do pay a separate hall attachment fee to help with the co-curricular activities and the leadership programs that take place outside of the classroom.
Prof, you're similar or?
Our situation is that we have only about 600 students living on campus at Papine, and the sums they pay are significantly less than $190,000 per.
Roughly.
The rough figure, I was trying to ascertain the exact figure, but I'm not in a position to provide it now. I think it's approximately $100,000.
Oh, so maybe 60%.
Yeah.
Wow. All right. Okay. No, I have member Daly who has been waiting patiently.
Thank you, Chairman. Just a quick follow-up in regards to the spaces on campus. Do you have enough space to accommodate students, if they are so desired? And let me just finish quickly. In terms of your compliance rate, in regards to the paying back, the different collecting agencies and persons that you use to assist in enhancing collection, what percentage do they get back for their service given? Is it more?
I think that second question is at the Student Loan Bureau?
Yes.
The second part would be for the Student Loan Bureau and the first.
Yeah, thank you very much. In regards to the paying back, and what kind of fee in terms of not just the actual fee, but the percentage the persons who are delinquent have to pay back when paying back if you are using collecting agencies?
All right, you take your section first, bro.
Thank you, Chair. We would like to offer more accommodation to students at UTEC. A rough estimate suggests that we should accommodate at least another 600 students. So we have been in preliminary discussions about expansion that would involve putting up another hall of residence. Now, there is a collection rate question for us too, because we have receivables, including student non-payment, and we have an office which seeks to track that down, but for more aged receivables, we rely on an external agent, and that external agent gets 18%? Charges 18% of the 1/8 of the sums recovered.
No, from what's
yes,
collected.
it's owed to us.
Oh,
It's owed to us. When they collect what is owed to us,
them
they
back
take
1/8.
Yes, 18%.
18%?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Is that the same for you, the Student Loan Bureau? Do you have internal collection or?
The Students' Loan Bureau has staff who are involved in collecting on loans, and those are staff, so they are salaried. In terms of the agents, there are internal debt collectors who are commissioned the agents, and there are external debt collectors. For the internal debt collectors, the commission is roughly 15% on average, and for the external collectors, it ranges between 20 and I think 24%. So that
what
is the
are the
commission.
mechanisms? I mean, what do they do that you can't do, for example?
Well, these are chronically these are chronically delinquent borrowers, and we do not have the resources nor the infrastructure to chase up these persons across the length and breadth of the island. Some of them are overseas, and these debt collectors, they have skills in that area, so they are able to use whatever means to locate some of these persons.
What skills those were, but nonetheless, all right.
Yeah.
Chairman, it might be that they have better smiles when they go asking, sir. Can I respond for the UWI, sir?
Sure.
So we have 11 halls of residence with over 5,000 spaces for students. In fact, we currently have some UTEC students, and we'd be willing to take more, Stephen. So we can talk about that as a possibility.
I think he's willing to take them if you can drop it from 180 to 100.
Well, as I'm about to comment, Mr. Chairman, that I thought I was becoming the principal of an academic institution, but I found out very quickly I'm a CEO of a large company.
Absolutely.
So I have to invite those who wish to stay at a cost that is comparable to those who are currently staying. But that said, we also have, for our long outstanding debts, we also have a collection mechanism, and my bursar informs me that it's a 20% that the collector gets for having, removing the emotion and collecting on our behalf.
Member Campbell.
Chair, thank you, Chair.
Hold on. Prof, there was a follow-up. You wanted just to add something to that?
Yes, Chair. Thank you. It is to say I have now been able to ascertain the exact cost for Farquharson Hall. It's $123,875, which is considerably less than what UWI is offering at the moment. But we can talk.
I have a feeling that there's going to be a response shortly. But Member Campbell, go ahead.
Let me first, thank you, Chair. Let me first direct my first question to Ms. Brown from SLB. The figure from UA in terms of the take-up is 22.5%. And using your present numbers, if you were to move that figure to a take-up figure of 50%, how much would that be your additional cost?
Of the 20,000 UE students, about 22% applies to the Students' Loan Bureau. So that's about 4,000 or so. So if we were to increase it to 50, it would be about 8,000 to 10,000 applicants. And in terms of the amount required to fund those 8,000 to 10,000 applicants, it would be a significant amount. So on average, we disbursed to UE. Last year, for example, we disbursed about 1.4 billion for the 22%. So that would at least be doubled. So that would be $2.5 to $3 billion that we're looking at. 2.6 billion, I gather, that we would be looking at in terms of disbursements to that institution.
And in terms of your collections, do you have those funds? Let's say you were to have the movement up to 50%. Would you have those funds to make the distribution?
We would not be able to accommodate such a significant increase in the amount to be disbursed to one institution without additional injection of funds. For the year, we collect about 3.2, 3.5 billion. And if we are to give one institution 2.6 billion out of that, that would significantly deplete our resources. So it would mean that there are some institutions who would not be able to get full allocation unless there is external injection. So there would need to be additional injection of funds for us to accommodate a doubling of the disbursement to UE.
So in real terms, you are not in a position to finance an increase, whether it is from UTEC or University of the West Indies?
Well, if you're talking about 5% increase as against a 50% increase or a doubling, you know, it makes a difference. So if it's a small increase, then we should be able to accommodate it.
Well,
but for a huge increase, we won't
well,
be
given
able
the
to.
numbers who don't apply, and because for one reason or the other, they don't apply. Mm-hmm. Let's say that they were to now decide you're going out on a marketing program and you're selling your services to them. And I know you have a history of going out to Petrocarib and all those. How would it? How? Well, but you know, there are other financial institutions. But how would you be able to finance the increases? Let's not move it to 50%. Let's move it to 35%. And you're really seeking an additional $2 billion across the two major institutions, that is. But given the difficulties you have experienced in the past, how would you see yourself being able to finance that?
In the past, we have accessed borrowing to make disbursements to students. And borrowing comes at a cost. And in addition to the cost, which is the interest cost, there's also the foreign exchange risk that we bear for the borrowings, the current borrowings that we have from the CDB and from the Petrocarib Fund. So borrowing is an option, but I do not know that we would want to go that route now. There are also other options. There was a recent study that was done, a recent review that was done by a consultant, and one of the recommendations is that the Students' Loan Bureau in conjunction with the government of Jamaica, should look to an education bond. And the proposal is that this would be directed at primarily at the deposit-taking institutions supervised by the central bank. So that is a proposal that has been made, and it is something that the board will deliberate on. We have gone the route before of accessing funds through the central bank by way of release of some of the cash reserves, and we were able to borrow at a concessionary rate. So we have gone that route before. But we would have to be guided, and that would have to come out of authorization from our parent ministry. So that is another option in terms of looking at how the private sector could assist in any additional funding that is required to satisfy increased disbursements.
Clarity, Member Campbell, the second option you said, could you just clarify, you said with the financial institutions. What was that?
In the past, what the Bank of Jamaica did was release some of the cash reserve to the banks, and they were able to lend to the Students' Loan Bureau at a concessionary rate, because the cash reserves at the Bank of Jamaica, it attracts no interest. No interest is paid on it. So the banks were able to deploy those funds to the Students' Loan Bureau and earn an interest on it. So it's a similar proposal that is coming out of the recent study.
Similar to what?
Right.
All right, go ahead.
Chairman, there's one other area that I need some understanding, and perhaps PS will be able to deal with this one. The distribution over the two major institutions, I see where you funding UE to the tune of something in the region of 7 billion. Yes, per annum.
With the hospital, it's about 8.7 billion.
But to the educational institution, you're somewhere in the region of $7 billion.
For UWI, is 8.216,550,944. That's 8,216,550,944.
Right. So that works out to pretty close to $400,000 per student.
Yes.
And I want to understand the disparity, because I think Prof would want to Prof zero in on this, because the funding that you're making available to UTEC per student is somewhere in the region of $155,000.
Right. We fund UTEC to a total of $1,871,826,000.
Yeah. So I'm just looking at the
per student,
the breakout. Yeah. And I'm trying to understand it's this clear dissonance there, because if the two institutions are on par, and I have no reason to believe that they are otherwise, what justification do you have for making that one allocation, which is significant, or more than twice, to UE as opposed to? Is it that the University of the West Indies is operating at such a low level of efficiency? Because Professor Vassiana seems to be very happy with, to the extent that he can even charge low on the rates for his housing. I just need some understanding of what.
I think Mr. Chairman and member, what we are doing, we have an issue of history, and so we are trying to catch up as it relates to the funding for the University of Technology. I know that before me now are some positions at UTEC that we need to discuss with the management to have those properly established, so we can then come back to the Ministry of Finance and the Cabinet to provide that support for them, to get them get more subvention.
Does it have anything to do with our treaty obligation?
Well, certainly we have a treaty obligation for the University of the West Indies, and so the system of funding the University of the West Indies would involve, the grants committee that we have to attend, and we will look at, there's this issue of 80-20 model that we have been looking at over time and so forth. But what I say to the council all the time is that what we fund the university is what is approved in the parliament.
And that's the easy answer.
That's what is approved in the parliament. So we can't go outside of what is approved in the parliament.
Okay, I take your point. But how quickly can we hope to have a resolution to that?
Well, for the party issue is one that is ongoing, and Professor Vassiani indicated that there have been many discussions on the matter. Certainly, the Cabinet of Jamaica has been apprised of it, and they have sent us to go back to look back at some issues of the structure of the University of Technology, to have certain posts and so forth established, so we can come back to them now with the proper costing to fund the University of Technology.
Well, no, Prof. Yes, I'm coming to you, Prof.
Yes, Chairman, I just wanted to put on record that the University of the West Indies is cognizant of the contributions of the government of Jamaica, but I was going to reaffirm the point that we are a regional institution, only one of two in the world, the other being University of South Pacific, where the funding structure, the University Grants Committee funding structure, does require contributions from all 17 countries to a central entity, which is then redistributed. So there are some nuances in our governance structure which makes it slightly different. And research and outreach poses a lot of what we ask our faculty to engage in, which gets us additional mileage. And I'll invite you all to our research days, February 6th to 8th, where we're showing how research has influenced policy over the last 20 years out of our university.
Just as a clarity, what percentage the government of Jamaica subvention, if you take out the fees, what percentage of the subvention does it make vis-a-vis the other countries? How many countries you said?
It's 17 in all. The landed campus countries, Barbados, Trinidad, and Jamaica, contribute far more than the others, but there is a contribution from all countries.
But in Jamaica, what percentage would Jamaica be with relation to the rest?
I would need to do a little calculation on that, sir, but we can get that information back to you.
Sure. All right, Member Paula.
Thanks, Chairman. When the UE was last year, I had raised two issues, and perhaps as both are here now, both UTech and UE, we could get responses. Firstly, I had raised the matter of student employment opportunities, and I had noted the establishment of Sutherland at UWI. I was minister at the time when these things were initiated, and the opportunity that was provided for students to earn a living, which is a major aspect of the funding for students going forward, because it is always better, I believe, for the student to manage the financial obligation through actual earning. And I want to inquire if the university, if the universities see this as a continuing viable prospect for students. And associated with that is my second issue, because the UE did lament the parlous state of finances. And I had raised a point that in this day and age, we now need to see these institutions less for their cost-centeredness approach, and rather as profit-generating centers. And that these bodies, where you have the largest concentration of brain power in Jamaica, it's not at Grace Kennedy, it's not at Jamaica Boilers, the largest concentration of brain power is at UE, is at UTech. What are the institutions doing to become wealthy, to become rich, to become prosperous? And I know last time mention was made about the focus on expanding your academic program and to have students paying full cost. And I know the housing is also a center. I know you do get involved in printing and so on. But I would like to suggest that that is limiting the potential of the universities. You could be contributing to the coffers of the government rather than the other way around if that concentration of brain power is used to establish viable businesses, not with you, Mr. Principal, as CEO, but to have a unit in the universities headed by a CEO to build viable businesses. Our economy has not been growing, and that must be a concern of the universities. And what better place to demonstrate financial viability for businesses to actually do businesses than at the universities, where you have such great concentration of brain power.
So, Chairman, thank you very much, Member. The University of the West Indies recognizes its responsibility to try and grow the economies of not just Jamaica, but the entire Caribbean. In fact, our strategic plan talks about revitalizing Caribbean development. To start where you started with the Sutherland Global, when that was brought on, you were the minister and you would have known that Sutherland employed 70% of its employees were university students. If you can have students employed, you know where your tuition is coming from. When that was removed from the universities, it has been removed, yes. We lost that, registrar how long ago? 5 years? We're now, instead of operating it, which we did at a great profit, it was removed. And I do say removed, we didn't give it up voluntarily, because it was a major part of our financial structure. We lost student employment, we also lost the profit, and we lost the companies that we were doing the call center for. We are now relegated to almost just landlords collecting for the space that's occupied by Sutherland, to the point where the university is considering, should we put on our own call center somewhere else? So we're thinking about it. But we do have to come out of this financial quagmire to be able to make such a large investment. But we are recognizing that if we can employ students, then we know where our fees are coming from, and that will take care of the student fee problem. But the university does need to grow and grow its income. Our business is teaching and learning. So yes, we have fee-paying programs. In fact, all new programs at the university are self-financing. That's a mandate that was made about 10 years ago, where we charge to recover on all programs. But beyond that, there are things that we can do. For instance, we've actively gone into the housing. That's why I was inviting Principal Vassiana to send some more students so we can collect. But yes, housing is one. We've gone in for our own water to reduce our water bill, and we save about 18 million a month now. We're about to go into a cogen plant where we're going to save a large amount again. So the idea is to reduce your costs while trying to grow your income. And the idea of a company of the university, there are 6 companies within the university which we are now restructuring to try and make sure they are all profit-making centers. And under this administration, if it's not profit-making, within a year, you will hear some of those entities closing, because we can't take any more hemorrhaging. We can't continue to offer a lot of the social support that we would like to, even if it is reduced or removed for a time. We need to get a period of consolidation before we can make the bold steps that we would like to make.
All right. I think, yeah, but I'm just members. Is there anybody else that has a question? Just All right, I waited. You have more? All right, Prof.
Thank you, Chairman. We have an earn and study program which provides employment for our students, which requires us to pay out $24 million. So we are, in that way, seeking to facilitate our students. But we find that many of our students work, and we structure our programs to accommodate them. So there are many programs in the evening designed precisely to ensure that persons can work and then come to classes. We are encouraging our academic staff to undertake research, not only research in the abstract, but research directly related to the needs of industry in Jamaica. Our strategic plan contemplates that we would increase the value of income from that kind of research from $150 million in 2018 to $750 million in 2021-22. We are actively encouraging projects of that nature. We have talked with various private sector entities about possibilities located on the Papine campus, but there is a space factor that we have to bear in mind. But we have been in discussions. We have also in place the Technology Innovation Center, which we're trying to bolster as an incubator for ideas. So we have private sector entities coming to the center, setting up offices and preparing their enterprises so that they can go out on their own. That is an active part of what the university now does, and we have been in discussions with DBJ about ways of enhancing that initiative. So we are mindful of the need, of the importance of generating funding for our students and for the institution as a whole. And one other thing I would say concerning generating funding for students is that quite a number of our students work overseas in the summer period and come back and use that funding to pay for their fees. Yes, but there's a challenge which arises because they tend to come back a little late. And so they miss out the first 2 weeks of classes, and then it becomes a treadmill trying to catch up. So we are trying to encourage them to come back on time so that they can fit in properly in the academic program. But we are very mindful of the need to generate more funds, both as an institution and for students.
All right, members are trying to. No, Member Don and Member Jackson. And Member Stewart.
Much of them have already been answered. But one I want to pick up on, but two I want to pick up on. PS, the comparative costs. You look at a 3-year degree at UTEC for approximately $150,000 to $200,000 to a similar 3-year degree at UWI for $275,000 to $300,000. That's roughly 83% higher in costs from the data that I have here. Now, yes, you're a regional institution. Is it that the regional advantage is 83% more in value than what UTEC is providing? So that is something that jumps at you, Professor Weber, and to reconcile. So when I hear the answer about the regional nature and the 17 countries, though I know the smaller countries would provide much less, because it has to do with the proportion of students in enrollment. So that's one thing I'm not clear on it. The argument don't seem on the surface credible to me to justify that 83%. If I just use that data as a reference data. Another question I have, the 18,500 enrollment at UWI, is that MONA or system-wide?
Thank you, Chairman. Well, answer the last question easiest first. That is MONA. The university, the entire University of the West Indies has 47,000 students. of which the Mona campus has, well, up to yesterday, 19,100. So this is just the Mona campus, which also includes our Western Jamaica campus.
Okay, and the government subvention of the 9 billion is for the system-wide, not just Mona?
Yes.
Okay. Because we have students elsewhere outside of Mona.
Correct.
Yeah. We have students.
We have students at St. Augustine. We have students at Caveville. Yes.
And Trinidad. The engineering.
At St. Augustine, yes.
At St. Augustine, yeah. The other question too, I'm not really so, well, you answer that.
The first question.
You want to elaborate on the 83%?
Well, I'm not sure those data are correct. I would ask if they, I mean, the information I got, the information.
I just used the three-year degree to arrive at it, so it might.
Well, I think I'd like to check those data because the cost of the program at UTEC and UWI are comparable. They're not that far apart in cost. Yes. In terms of what we call the UGC or the fee-paying program, the government-assisted programs. What we do recognize is that there are some programs like the dentistry program, the medicine program, the law, the engineering, which are much higher. Yeah. Which is why the Students' Loan Bureau will give a much larger loan.
But those are small in numbers, though. Nominal numbers of students in those faculties.
There are 300 students doing medicine each year.
Compared to 18,000.
Well, of the total number, yes.
Yeah. Okay. The other question of efficiency, the comparative thing is one element. My colleague, Sir Campbell, was asking earlier. Every year you have additional operating costs, and I think it is inflation and other things that you have to deal with. And the more the costs go up, is the more the demand, both in terms of tuition and in terms of government subvention. I just want to get a sense, professors, both, in the case of UTEC and things, is there a deliberate attempt within the universities to manage reduce costs while expanding what you put out, because that's how your overall efficiency is going to be increased. And I want to submit that the burden of being successful in that regard is greatest on institutions like yours. Why? Because you have all the intellectual talent residing there that teach us in the public sector and in the private sector how to achieve those very goals. So I just want to submit that as an academic institution, from a management standpoint, the burden is overwhelming. Because you can't do it, or you expect us to do it. And you have the wisdom and the research capacity to advise yourself, and you can lend yourself to the intellectual rigor that is required to achieve those kinds of output. I just want to run through them. That is the second concern I have, Chairman. But related to that too, Student Loan Bureau, you mentioned about the targeted programs, and that one is a bit concerning to me. The targeted programs that I think benefit, at UWI, that have 100% funding from the SLB. And I would like to know what really are those targeted programs, because I recall very well that one of the things that gave birth to CAS and then UTEC was an institution created to respond to national needs, particularly in the area of engineering and so on. So it is to fulfill the demands, the professional demands within the society. And so I would want to believe that virtually all of UTEC's program would fall in that category of targeting your funding, skew it towards fulfilling national development needs. In fact, former Prime Minister Bruce Golding, I remember, had made a big point which gave earned support from many quarters about skewing student loan funding to national programs that fulfill national demand. So I would love to get some clarity. What make up that pool of targeted programs that enjoy full 100% financing? The other thing is the collection and indebtedness to the Student Loan Bureau. Where are you in that regard? Or are you, how would you say you are? Are your receivables going down from what it used to be a year or two before? What dramatic, well, if any, dramatic change in that regard? And lastly, Mr. Chairman, again for the student loan, to clarify for me, because I never too understand the funding from the cash reserve requirement. You said, is it the cash reserve requirement that the commercial bank, the deposit taking institution have to hold, that they can lend from, and they charge an interest on that? Because from my understanding is that the cash reserve held by the banks are monies that they are not able to lend to earn from normally. But under the arrangement now, you're allowing them to lend it to these student loan facility. What are the interest charges that obtain nominally for these lending?
Okay, the reserves that are held by the commercial banks are in two components: the cash reserve and the liquid asset reserve. The cash reserve portion is held at the Bank of Jamaica, and the liquid assets are held by the banks, and it also includes the cash reserve. So your investments in short-term government instruments, and so those qualify as liquid assets, and the banks usually hold these so that they can honor their obligations, their liabilities when people call on them for funds. So the portion that the recommendation alludes to is the liquid asset, cash reserve, which is held at the Bank of Jamaica. So the Bank of Jamaica requires that a certain percent of the bank's deposits are held as cash reserve, and that is to ensure that, in the event of a call on funds, the bank is able to satisfy those needs. So those cash reserves that are held at the Bank of Jamaica, those are not subject to interest. They're not interest earning, whereas the liquid asset reserves, those earn interest. So the proposal that is coming out of the recent study is that the Ministry of Finance stroke Bank of Jamaica look at the possibility of lowering the cash reserve requirement and releasing some of those funds to lend to the tertiary education through the Students' Loan Bureau. So the proposal is that a bond is floated, and the target market for that bond would be the deposit-taking institutions, and it will be funded by those cash reserves that are released by the central bank. So that is the proposal that came out of the study. Yes, it's a proposal. It's a proposal which needs some discussion at a higher level for a decision. No, years ago we were able to access a facility through the banks, a similar facility through the banks, where the central bank released some of its reserves.
If I could just add, as she just indicated, that was years ago. What is being proposed, it is highly unlikely that it is something that could be facilitated at this time, given the whole efficiency, the whole regulatory framework. That is not something that is likely to be facilitated.
Yeah.
Programs.
Sorry. The targeted loans issued by the Students' Loan Bureau is basically the traditional lending by the students. So because when the Bureau started, it had one loan product, which is, the traditional lending to students and the payback after graduation. Subsequent to that, we have added some new products. So the pay-as-you-study loan is another loan product. So that is not the traditional student loan product. So that's the distinction I was making. So not the GOG sponsored and the non-GOG subsidized. So that is another distinction that UE could speak to, and probably UTEC. But the distinction is between the traditional loan offered by the Students' Loan Bureau versus the relatively new products, the pay-as-you-study loan, and there's also a postgraduate loan. So that's this distinction I was making. So for the non-governmental Jamaica-sponsored programs, those are not fully funded by the Students' Loan Bureau because that would be a huge drain on our limited funds, and it would be concentration of the risks, to the extent that we would not want to see.
No, hold on. Member, don't.
No, completion. Answer. No, completion.
Oh, what's the last part?
Yeah, the collections.
Indebtedness and the collection.
The collections have increased significantly. About 8 or so years ago, we were collecting $964 million. Now we collected $3.2 billion as at March 2018. And for March 2019, we are targeting $3.5 billion. So the collections have increased significantly. In terms of the receivables, I think you're getting at the delinquency. Delinquency still remains high. And much of what we are seeing as delinquent are system related to a large extent. So we switched to reducing balance interest in 2016. And the effect of that is where loans remain unpaid, the interest continue to accrue. And at the end of the month, the interest accrued is added to the outstanding balance. So the outstanding balance continues to increase. So you will see an increase in the outstanding balance. So it's a system and business rule issue that need to be fixed, and that work is going on now. But what you have seen is a significant increase in collections, and you have also seen reported delinquency going up as a result largely of that compounding factor.
I think what I was trying to get out of it, what would be your bad loan portfolio? How much money outstanding? What is it that you're...
Yeah, the bad loans, well, I'll define delinquent loans, and these are the loans that are past due for 90 days or more. So those loans amount to about, I think about 9 billion of the loans. 9 billion of the
9 billion.
9 of the 26.7 billion at March 2018.
So you're saying 26 billion is the total portfolio?
Gross, yes, the gross
portfolio, of which 9 billion is over 90 days.
90 days past
overdue.
Due. Right.
So that's about 30%.
Yes.
Question to that, Chairman. Given the nature of these loans, 90 days, as I understand it, is what obtains generally in the banking industry, borrowing generally. But given the nature of your lending, a man set up a business to produce and sell products is kind of more certain, because he would have done his business market survey, a business plan, and all of that. For students graduating, all right, and going into an environment of greater uncertainty of employment, from an accounting standpoint, isn't that a bit impractical to expect the same level of response for that set of borrowers as against commercial borrowers or business borrowers? And shouldn't your assessment methodologies be modified to reflect this critical differentiation from your borrowers as against commercial borrowers? And while I'm on the floor, before I close, Chairman, I just say, a question I never ask for both UTEC and UE is, what are their unused enrollment capacities? Can you talk about enabling more students to attend universities? Just what capacities you have that you can accommodate more, and so that we will know as a country what more tertiary facilities or space do we need to satisfy a greater number of our youngsters, well, people being educated at the tertiary level.
In response to the issue raised by the member regarding what we call delinquent loans at the Students' Loan Bureau, I agree with you. The definition more fits a commercial banking environment, in that delinquent loans are defined as those that are 90 days or more past due. What we have at the Students' Loan Bureau is a situation where the loans enter repayment after the student completes. So the student completes about May, June this year. The loan enters repayment the following January. Now that student, based on the data, does not get employed until probably 9 months after. On average, some get employed earlier. So at 90 days, by end of March, we are calling these loans delinquent when the student has not yet got a job. So when I spoke about the need for review, realignment of the business rules and the system, that is one of the issues that needs to be dealt with, because we are calling the loans bad when the borrower really has not yet had an opportunity to start generating income to service the loan.
Do you have a figure at 1 year or 2 years? Those that are delinquent over a year?
We have the breakout. I don't know that I have it here with me.
So the only one you have is at 90 days?
Yes, 90 days, yes. And that's everything. That's all you can
I'm trying to look at just an idea of what is it sort of chronic.
Yes.
You know, anything over a year or 2 years.
Yes, 90
days
have
some
and
other
over.
figure.
So we would need to disaggregate that
Which
90
is, I
days
think
and
that's where you're
over
going.
into some
Well, what you can
smaller
do is
buckets.
maybe you can yeah, you have something there?
For 16, 17, impaired loans, 4 million. Impaired loans at 2017.
Impaired mean over what period?
Impaired. The 90 days.
No, we have the 90. We wanted
over
more.
1 year, sorry.
There we go.
995 million, 1 to 2 years, this says. 2 to 3 years, 1.276 billion.
Hold on. So wait a second. 995 million is over a year.
Right. 1 year to 2 years. 2 years to 3 years, 1.276 billion. And 3 to 4 years, 1.166 billion.
1.66. So what you're saying is that over a year, if you add all of this up,
yes,
you're at 3.6 roughly.
Yes.
3.6 billion.
Yes.
These are the ones that are really impaired, is what you're saying.
Chronically delinquent, yes. Yes.
All right. There were, I don't know the information briefly, just so, and I don't necessarily think you will be able to give exact figures, but just I'm trying to, normally we try to finish by 1 o'clock, but I'd allow Prof. Marciana, you want to respond to the question?
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to respond to the member's question about the capacity.
Exactly.
We estimate that we can move up to 13,000 students on the campus by from 11,500 to 13,000. by more skillful and careful use of the resources in place at the moment. And there has been more generally a deliberate attempt to keep our costs down and to utilize the facilities better. We have had a study done an external study relating to our cost centers, and we have also had a study done concerning the summer school and ways in which we can enhance the use of the summer school. We have a cost savings committee in place which monitors the use of utilities on a month-by-month basis, and we have embarked on a program of seeking to cut back on all avoidable expenses, including overseas travel and things of that nature. And finally, it would be remiss if I didn't mention that one of the ways in which UTEC has been able to keep down costs is not a good way. It has been by keeping down the salary levels of the members of staff, and so there is now tension in the system between the management and the unions, because they say, why is it our salaries are so much lower than people who are working in the same kind of job half a mile away? And that is a question.
Without calling any names.
We have challenges. But that's where we are.
It's an opportune moment for you, Prof. Weber.
I hear you, Chairman. Well, I could just say ditto for everything that Principal Vassiana just said. We to do the cost containment. I mean, that's why we've gone for water for our own well, gone for a cogen plant for our own electricity. Those are to reduce the utilities, which are a major part of what happens. But in terms of the teaching, research, what we do, we too are trying to get as efficient as possible. That is the only way out of this. So we're looking at courses, and courses with minimum numbers. We've moved our minimum numbers to a point where we're now saying we're not offering some courses, we're offering courses every other year. So we've changed how we deliver to meet what's there. And in terms of the infrastructure, we're almost maxed out in terms of physical space, which is why online is our answer. So our move forward is online for every new course that comes on, and we're now working backwards. We've just set up an office for online learning where we're going to go backwards now, trying to retrofit in terms of getting online. But online doesn't just mean sending out a PowerPoint. There is a package to online delivery, which is a whole new dispensation, and we're working our way through that.
Madam?
Yes, something that has just bothered me a little bit, and it goes for UTEC. I think last year I saw in the paper where UTEC has now gotten the privilege of accreditation for all courses being offered by the institution. I think there's a 5-year window that is reviewed each year. UA has had that for a very long time. So the question is, and I don't know if you can answer it, Prof. Vassiani, why has it taken UTEC almost 60 years to get that status?
Thank you for that question, member. UTEC on December 24th, 2018, received a letter confirming that we were institutionally accredited for 7 years. That's the maximum time that is allowed, and that maximum time granted is a sign of the quality of the application that was put together. Why wasn't it done before? I think UWI, well, let me not speak for UWI, but it was not done before because institutional accreditation is a fairly new concept in the Jamaican educational system. So I believe it was first introduced about 5 years ago. And UTEC, at various times in the last 5 years, had been proceeding with program accreditation one by one. And then a decision was taken to go for institutional accreditation, maybe 3 years ago. So if there has been a delay, it has been a delay of 2 years. When we applied, the process is such that it has taken 3 years to do, because you have to prepare a self-study, the UCJ has to review the self-study, and then there's a visit, etc. So we think we were in reasonably good time, but there was a period when we got some bad publicity because there were certain programs which were not accredited at the time. And so people were critical of that. And that had an economic impact on UTEC, because if you're a student and you can go to University A, which has accreditation for that program, and UTEC, you will choose University A. So we are happy that we have put that out of the way. And we also have taken the view that it provides us with a launching pad for further development.
Prof. Boxer.
Chair, I just wanted to respond to, I think it was a question raised by Mr. Jackson. And, well, not respond directly, but a sort of contextual response, because I think he asked some very pointed questions about cost. And as the Principal Weber has indicated, we have spent some time looking at how we can contain cost. But in the process of doing this, what we've discovered in doing a lot of the research is that the problem that we face with tertiary education in Jamaica is actually a global problem. And in some respects, we are responding to the challenge much better. Not as good as we should, but certainly much better than many other places. Because if you were to take United States, the cost of tertiary education increases about 6% annually. Student debt in the United States is about 1.3 trillion. And this is why Bernie Sanders, in the last election, had been part of his platform was to ask that the government fund tertiary education for students in the United States. It's not just the United States. All of the rich countries are currently faced with this problem. How do we fund tertiary education? And globally, from Africa, Latin America, this morning I think there was a registrar who pointed out that there are a number of universities in the UK which are in debt and are about to collapse because of the funding models. The traditional funding models have all fallen apart. And what has really impacted on this is the fact that the usual government subventions have been removed, and the recent financial crisis has had an impact on things like endowment. So there's a context for all of this, and I think that when we discuss this, that we have to put it in this context.
Member Stuart.
Chairman, through you to Ms. Monica Brown as Student Loan Bureau. To what extent, Ms. Brown, is proper due diligence done before names are submitted to the collection agencies? Because there is a lot of cry on the ground that persons are being written to by these agencies. Letters, very strong letters. I myself became a victim just last week when I received a letter from one of those agencies having stood as guarantor. When I contacted the agency, the loan was cleared off long ago, and I still got a letter threatening me with court actions. So we need to what extent are we having these issues being dealt with before these letters are sent out?
I'd really love to get information to look at that case, but we do our best to do extensive due diligence before loans are farmed out to the debt collectors, because we recognize the risks involved, and if one slips through, we are not happy. So I'd really love to speak with you after I get some information so we can do some research on that. But what I do find is that once the debt collectors get involved, they have to collect. So they will make contact with the guarantors where the beneficiaries are not paying, are not able to pay. And that is the legal agreement that has been entered into. But if there are instances where there are errors, I really would apologize for that, but I'd love to get the information so we can do the research and satisfy ourselves. Part of what we are blamed for is taking long to do things, and part of that time is spent to do the due diligence to ensure that where payments are made, they are properly applied to the accounts before they are referred to the debt collectors.
Mr. Brown, just two quick questions. One, someone had sent me an email a few months ago about forward payments to the Students' Loan Bureau. They took a student loan. Having gotten the loan, they've gotten a job and they're paying off the loan. And what happened is that they have a monthly payment which they pay, but because they had some additional money, they sent it in to pay down the capital, to sort of pay off the loan, early payment, and they are being told they cannot do that. And that in putting the money on it, it was not put towards the capital, it was put in a deferred account so that it adds. But they're saying that the same loan and the interest, everything continues the same way. Is there some... Is that not true, or is this so?
I'm not sure who would have communicated that it cannot be done. It is something that can be done, but it is limited to payment at the Students' Loan Office, because we have collection agencies, the banks, the bill payment agencies, etc. And without those instructions coming to us for application of the excess payment to principal, we would not know that this is what the beneficiary requires.
Maybe you're correct. So you're saying that they have to come to the head office,
yes,
to make the payment?
If they make the payment directly at the SLB, it automatically...
But is there not some way that this information could be channeled online? I mean, given today's reality, if they're making payments and they're able to inform you, would you not be able to make the necessary adjustments?
Yes, and once we get the requests from the customer, the instructions from the customer, we are able to apply to principal. I think that's the point that you're making. But without those instructions, we are not in a position to do it outside of the Students' Loan Bureau office. So if the payment is made elsewhere at the bank, at the bill payment agency, what they need to do is to make contact with us so that we can have that adjustment done at the back office.
Appropriately.
Yes.
All right. Second thing, this dedicated programs, the sponsored programs that both Professor Weber spoke of, and you mentioned it as well. There are a group of specialties or areas, fields that government has indicated are important, that get full tuition covered, and also at the institutions there are lower cost. What are these programs? Can anyone tell us? Because I think that if it is not done, the proper sort of information out there, this could direct people in a direction of which are those subjects that are which are the subjects that are sponsored, but also how are these subjects identified and by who? I think PS and Registrar.
Chair, thank you. If I could give a little context for the UE programs, because there is a historic, you might want to call it cultural context there, that in the initial development of the University of the West Indies as a regional university, at that time, with that 80-20 model, meaning students pay 20% of the tuition, government sponsors 80%, that was from the initial agreement with the countries of the region. They weren't by needs based, it was just that part of that treaty that was signed, that we will sponsor all your programs. And that was part of the development in the University of the West Indies. Several years ago, because this was under Professor Kenneth Hall, former GG, And I don't have the documentation, but our understanding was that the government at that time, that model wasn't working any longer. And so the commitment for that 80% was no longer in place. And the government indicated that if the new programs that are coming on cannot be brought on under that understanding, and they will need to be sustaining themselves. And so the term self-financing programs. So this wasn't actually based on government needs or on. Since that time, in more recent years, 2-3 years, certainly under Minister Reid, I'm sure the discussion has been, we need to look at a new model and to think about whether or not we will sponsor students in particular programs that are going towards national development. And the PS is here and can correct me. That's the understanding we have.
That's exactly what I'm saying. I'm just making the point. There is something that there's a difference. There are some subjects that seem to be sponsored, but I'm not certain. Are you saying that none of those programs exist now as a sponsored program? There's no. Well, Pierce?
Well, Chairman, I think that you would be able to say that there are what we call UGC
yeah, because
UGC
they
programs,
mention here the science, technology, engineering, and medical sciences.
And some TVET
we're
programs.
Told what?
And some TVET programs.
Who?
TVET, Technical Vocational Education programs, and training programs. So,
how were those selected?
Are what you call
how were those selected?
Well, over time, Chairman, this has been subjects, areas that have been earmarked for support, and there's a grants committee that reviews the fees for these programs, and the 80-20 model that she spoke about usually applied to these areas. She did go on to say, Chairman, that the Honourable Minister has been clear, and it's a part of our tertiary funding model going forward, that we have to relook some of these programs to ensure that what we are sponsoring as a government is in line with national development. So that I mentioned the tertiary funding model that we are putting together earlier, and that is a part of it, to earmark funding for these specific programs for national development.
I would suggest that what should be in place is that there should be a collaboration with this tuition committee you spoke about, or all of these, and even the policy that the Planning Institute of Jamaica should really look at the needs of Jamaica, which areas are more readily filled, so that you know that student loans are probably going to get
Chairman,
paid better,
are correct.
And put it in place as a set policy, so that you can then fund and certainly direct student loans even more so there.
So the Chairman, the PIOJ is a full member of the conversation, and Dr. Henry and I, up to last week, we had those discussions, and we have this committee that we have put together. The labour market survey is very important to us, and the feedback is coming. So it's not something that you have to deliberate on properly and have the stakeholders and have the consultation. But we are way ahead in treating with that, and that is coming. Earmarking for those subjects that are geared towards national development, and the funding of those is a policy that we have been pushing forward. But that is being formalized for our cabinet to deliberate on.
Okay. Member Phillips, I think, and then we'll wrap it up.
Thank you, Chair. Just two questions, one to Prof. Weber and one to the FS. Prof, and you had, when we spoke about the deregistration and how many students actually come back to the institution to continue their education. But out of that 25, it would be good if you could just research it. The 25% that you say do not return. How many of them do return at some point? It would be something for us to find out. But secondly, just for clarity on the whole resources that students have to find. When a student starts at the beginning of the school year, the first semester, and they are somewhat deregistered or deregistered at the end of that semester, not finishing, not being able to finish, they will have to clear that fee for that first semester, even though not being able to, let me just ask, and then being able to take the exam. They will then have to then find monies to resit while continuing to finish some of those courses, even though having to clear up the balance of what was owed. Is that how it works?
Okay, Chairman. To Member Phillips, we undertake to do the research for those who have dropped out or did not continue after the deregistration to figure out did they come back. And we'll probably do this over like a 3-year period to see what the numbers are. For the students who are deregistered, they're wiped in terms of their record, in terms of the finances. They're given leave of absence for that period. They are allowed, if they had gotten all the way to exam date, they're actually allowed to come back the next year and do just the exams. They don't have to pay for a semester. They pay exams only and sit the exams. And if they had done coursework, we hold that coursework. We hold coursework up to 5 years. Because student can disengage and re-engage. So we'll hold the coursework until they come back anywhere within 5 years and then apply it when they sit the final exam. But they don't have to pay the semester that they lost plus a semester yet again.
And what would be good to also find out the amount for both institutions, the amount of students that actually apply on an annual basis and how many do take it up. Because I have met students in my own constituency that would have applied 2 years ago but not able to take it up because they don't see the financing. So there's a percentage out there that gets accepted but don't take it up at all, neither going to the Student Loan Bureau or. That would be good to also see those numbers. FS, the board of the Student Loan Bureau, I understand there was a sudden resignation or firing of the board sometime last year. I think it was either November or December. Can you shed some light on what are the issues facing the Student Loans Bureau on why that resignation or firing took place?
Okay, I am unable to shed any light at this time. Certainly it would have been the ministers who would have been.
Yes, but did the board resign or?
I would have to check. I'm aware that a new board has been appointed, but I would have to check.
So that means yes, the former board was.
It's no more, but I would have to check on what happened.
On the reasons why. Chair, it would be good for us to at least get some report on why it is.
Information on that.
And the timeline is correct? Did that happen in early December?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Chair, through you, I think if we could just have
if we could get
FS.
a report on that, FS.
Yes.
Thank you. All right, members. Okay, I'd like to thank everybody that came from the two of our tertiary institutions and the saving loan, as well as the two of our premier and Students Loan Bureau and both ministries. I think today's discussion has been very informative. Members, some suggestions have come out in the discussion. As usual, we would pass them on to the members and look at putting together a report with some recommendations to Parliament. Once again, thank you. Certainly for institutions, we're very proud of the work that you continue to do. And as I said, I think what we are trying to do here is to assist in seeing how we can work with you and create that bridge between the Parliament through the committee to to see how we can assist to the benefit of our students and the development of our country. So thank you for coming. I hope we have not taken you too far out of your research and development that you would have done this morning. Thanks for coming. And with that, members, just one piece of housekeeping, members. We have the minutes of the meeting held on Wednesday, January the 16th. I take them as read. No corrections. I'd ask for confirmation. Member Stewart, Member Daly. With that, members, thank you all, and you'll get information on the next meeting shortly. Thank you, and this meeting is now adjourned.